Let's move to the next topic, zoophily. Pollination takes place by the agency of animals is called as zoophilus. Now we are discussing about pollination. Previous class we discussed about agents of pollination. There are abiotic agents and biotic agents. Previous class we discussed in detail about abiotic agents of pollination. Now let's discuss biotic agents of pollination. Biotic agents. There are number of biotic agents. That means pollination takes place by the agencies of animals is called as zoophily, and the flowers are said to as zoophilous flowers. Zoophilous. What is meant by zoophily? Pollination takes place by the agencies of animals. There are number of animals which effectively bring about pollination. Based on this, there are different classification, namely Ornithophilly. When pollination takes place by the agencies of birds is termed as Ornithophilly. Then Chiroptophilly. Pollination takes place by the agencies of bats are called Chiropterophilly. Then Malacophilly. Pollination takes place by the agencies of snails are called as Malacophilly. And Entomophilly. Pollination takes place by the agencies of insects are called as Entomophilly. Myrmecophilly. Pollination takes place by the agencies of ants are called as Myrmecophilly. And Cantherophilly. Pollination takes place by the agencies of beetle is called as Cantherophilly. Then Phelanophilly. Pollination takes place by the agencies of moths are called as Phelanophilly. Then Melitophilly. Pollination takes place by the agencies of bees are called as Melitophilly. Psychophilly. Pollination takes place by the agencies of butterflies are called as Psychophilly. So based on this, these all are included under zoophily. All are animals including birds, insects, sometimes reptiles also reported as the pollinators. These all pollinators like birds, bats, snails, insects, moths, bees, butterflies, beetle, ants, everything involved in pollination. They are involved as the agencies of pollination. Let's go in brief. There are some mechanisms and there are some adaptations the flower which possess to attract the animals for effective pollination. Let's see few examples. So first, learn the classification. What are the different types of biotic pollinations? What are the agents involved in biotic agents? What are the animals, birds, ants? What are the animals which are involved for effective pollination? They are classified into Ornithophilly, Chiropterophilly, Entomophilly, Malacophilly, Cantherophilly, Myrmecophilly, Phelanophilly, Melitophilly, Psychophilly. We are going to discuss few in detail. For example, Ornithophilly, Chiropterophilly, Entomophilly, we are going to discuss in detail, and few mechanisms, how it is bring about pollination, how the flowers are adapted. Let's see one by one. First one is Ornithophilly. What's the definition Ornithophilly? Pollination brings about by the agencies of birds are called as Ornithophilly, and the flowers are said to be ornithophilous flowers. There are number of birds which visit the flowers. Early morning when you listen, there are birds which moves here and there and visit here and there gardens and suck the nectars. So these flowers usually possess certain adaptations. All these animals which attract by these flowers due to certain adaptations. What are the adaptations the ornithophilous flowers possess? These ornithophilous flowers are usually large in size. Either it develops in single or in cluster. And large flowers, brightly colored, red, yellow. Here are some flowers with different colors, red color flowers and the large flowers, and this is the yellow color flower. The shape of the flower is cup shaped or funnel shaped, and this is large brightly colored flowers which is easily attract the birds as well as the insects. So this shape and color which attracts the birds towards this flowers, and this secretes nectars. The flowers which secrete nectars, and the ornithophilous flowers are scentless flower, but it secretes nectars. These birds which suck the nectar from this flower, at the same time the pollen transfer taking place from anther to stigmatic surface. So effectively pollination taking place due to this flower. The shape of the flower is funnel shaped. Certain flowers are tubular and funnel shaped, cup shaped, or even urn shaped. Urn is this shape of the flower. Urn. These all different shape, funnel shaped, cup shaped, tubular shaped flowers. And these flowers are the petals. The floral whorls are leathery and very thick, because when the birds are visiting there, the impact of these visitors withhold this impact of this visitors. That's why the floral whorls are feathery as well as thick in nature. So these adaptations this ornithophilous flowers possess. Next adaptation, let's see in Chiropterophily flower. Chiropterophily. First classification is Ornithophily. Pollination is the agencies of birds. Chiropterophily. Next classification is Chiropterophily. Pollination brings out by the agencies of bats are called as Chiropterophily. Actually the bats are nocturnal inhabitant. Nocturnal. And these flowers produces a single or in clusters. A cluster like this, a cluster of flower which develops, or the flowers may be single. Either a single flower or a cluster of flower develops, and they secrete nectars as well as scents. So this produces odor, and these flowers are open. The nectaries of this flower, the flower opens before or after, at the time of dawn or before dawn it opens. Because of this nocturnal habitat, these bats are attracted towards this flowers at dawn. Because nocturnal, the habit of nocturnal is which is active in night. So the flowers are adapted in such a way. Scent flowers, the flowers which produces odor or scent, and nectars are present there. And these flowers, there is an example, common example of Chiropterophilous flower is Adensonia digitata. The example of this flower is Adensonia digitata. In this, the flower produces a ball of stamen and stigma. Normally, this bats which comes and visit, and the balls of stamen it holds with one hand and it keep it in its breast, and when it is sucking the nectar, the pollen grains are loaded in their breast, and when it is visiting to next flower, there is a chance of falling this pollen grain from from this bat's body to dusting on the stigmatic surface of the next flower. Such a way the effective pollination taking place in bats. So this type of adaptation is called as Chiropterophily. The name of this classification is Chiropterophily. This is another example, Adensonia digitata. So first one, ornithophilous flower by birds, Chiropterophily by bats. Example, Adensonia digitata. Then Malacophilly, Malacophilly, the snails, so many aquatic plants, the snails are used as a pollinator. And Entomophily, normally the entomophilous flowers and the ornithophilous flowers are brightly colored to attract the insects as well as the birds. So, in most of the flowers we will see very common, all the flowers which are surrounded by the insects, butterflies, all these many types of insects. So, these flowers are called as entomophilous flower and the classification is named as entomophily. What are the adaptations observed in the flowers? The flowers are either it possesses single or in clusters. If it is not single solitary flower is brightly colored, or it is cluster, it arranged all as a group, clusters of flower brightly colored, blue, yellow, pink, white, several colors which attracts the insects and it produces nectar as well as the scents. So, the nectar and the pollen are the reward for the visitors. Even this ornithophilous flower, the reward of visitors is nectar and the pollen. Here entomophilous flowers also reward as nectars and the pollens or the reward of the visitors. So, these flowers also brightly colored, different shape and it produces number of pollen grains. Pollen grains are more and it produces nectars and odor, scent. Due to the smell it attracts, due to the color it attracts. So, it attracts, the insects or attracts towards this flowers and effective pollination taking place by this insects. So, let us see, there are some examples. There are some mechanisms adapted to pollination. We are going to see three examples. First mechanism is called as liver mechanism. There are certain mechanisms based on the adaptations of the flower. These pollinating agents by the mode of pollination, there are some mechanisms are reported. First, one type of mechanism is liver mechanism. This is reported in the plant salvia. Salvia is the plant. This is the flower, salvia flower, which is a bisexual flower with bilabiate. Bilabiate is there are two lobed petals. The petals, this is one lobe, this is another lobe. Bilobiate. Bilobiate flower, bisexual flower, and this flower contains, here is the stigma, this is the stigmatic region, stigma, style and the ovary is present here. So, pistil is this yellow part and this is a long connective which carries the anther. In this anther contains two parts, the stamen. Stamen possesses two regions. This region is the anther, which is fertile region, and this region is the sterile region, and both the regions are connected by a long connective. A long connective connect this sterile end and the fertile end. So, this is the anther which carries the pollen grain. Now, this salvia flower is this is the insect pollinated flower. The bees used to visit this flower, beetles. So, when the beetles are come and visit the flower, there is a specific mechanism observed. See, look at this picture. Here, this is the insect. The beetle, when it comes and visit the flower, it sit on the lower lobe of the flower petal. Here in this lobe, it used to sit and it try to move inside. When it moves inside, here is the sterile region of this stamen. The sterile region which gets disturbed, and due to this, the fertile region of the back side, this fertile region which strikes on the back of the insect. So, this insect which moves inside, when it moves inside, it touches this sterile end. Due to this, it bends down the fertile region which carries the anther. Inside the pollens are present. This fertile anther, the pollen which dusted on the back of this beetle. When the beetle went away, it go and visit the next flower. There is a chance of dusting this pollen grain on the stigmatic region of the next flower. So, effective pollination taking place. Now, this mechanism is called as liver mechanism. Example, salvia. So, salvia is very good example of liver mechanism. This is one of the adaptation observed. Then that mechanism is liver mechanism. Then another flower is there, Calotropis, very common flower, you all familiar with this flower. This flower is a cluster of flower known as Calotropis. So, in this Calotropis there is a mechanism called translator mechanism. The mechanism of the pollination observed in this flower Calotropis is Calotropis translator mechanism. Actually, this flower contains, it belongs to Asclepidaceae or Apocynaceae based on this recent classification. So, this is Asclepidaceae or Asclepidaceae family, and the name of this flower is Calotropis. 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 Here is the stigma which contains this region, stigmatic region. This region is stigmatic region, stigma. This part of the stigma, the pollen grains are going to dust it. But here this stigmatic region, it lower side of this is recessive type, recessive type, and this is this stamen, this is the gynoecium, this stigma, and these are the pollen grains. So, it shows as a gynostegium. The term is gynostegium. That means the anther and the stigma which makes a connection. So, together it is called as gynostegium. Gynoecium and androecium together is present. So, gynostegium, it makes as a gynostegium. Stigmatic region is this end and the pollens are present at the side, and this pollen grains, here is the pollen. These pollens are forms at the base of this pollen. There is a colored hood like structure. At the base of this there is a colored hood like structure which possesses a horn structure, a horn as well as a hood present at this back of this pollen. And these pollens are collectively, it is not a single pollen, these pollens are together formed as Pollenia. The name of this is Pollenia. All the pollens are grouped together as a mass known as Pollenia. So, this is the structure of Pollenia. It used to show a inverted Y-shaped structure which is known as translator. Look at the structure of this translator. This translator which consists of a clamp or disc-like structure, clamp or clip-like structure. This structure is known as Corpus Coulomb. The clamp-like, when you remove this Pollenia from this stem, the stigmatic region, and the border of this, in the edge of this, we can find there is a pollenium. So, this pollenium, when you dissect out with the dissection needle, we will take it out, this one. It consists of a clamp-like structure called Corpus Coulomb, and from this Corpus Coulomb there is a thread-like structure, thread-like branch which is known as retinaculum. So, two parts are there, Corpus Coulomb, and below this there is a retinaculum. So, this Corpus Coulomb and a retinaculum which carries this pollen. So, the entire structure, this structure is known as translator. When the insects which comes and visits the flower, this translator attach the body, either the proboscis or the legs of the insect. So, when the insect visit to the next flower, when it fly away, it carries the pollinium. So, this pollinium are carried out. When it goes to the next flower, it is fall upon the stigmatic surface and effective pollination taking place. So, this type of pollination or this method is known as translator mechanism. So, in Calotropis there is a mechanism of pollination which is known as translator mechanism. In Salvia there is a mechanism called lever mechanism. Let us see one more mechanism which is observed in Aristolochia, that is trap mechanism. Trap. So, Aristolochia is the flower which gives a mechanism called, or which is reported by a mechanism called trap mechanism. Look at this flower, this is the Aristolochia flower. This flower also produces gynostegium and rhizome and gynoecium, which are present together, which are united together and forms as a gynostegium. So, in this flower, this Aristolochia flower, it shows trap mechanism. The flower which produces a tubular petal, the perianth is tubular in nature, and here is the inside this tubular, here is the gynostegium which possess 6 anthers are present in this. There are 6 anthers present in the gynostegium. When you observe this tubular part, the middle of this tubular part, there are certain hair-like structures. These hair-like structures are bent inwards. These hair-like structures are bent inwards. Now, the bees or the insects, when the flower is young, it is erect. So, this is the young flower which is erect. So, the bees get inside this tubular part, and once the ants or the insects when it beetles or insects when it enters in, it cannot escape because of this hairs. This curved hairs are present, the bees cannot escape, the insects cannot escape. So, here are the anthers. Later, when the anther matures and this this perianth region which wither. After withering this perianth, this flower gets bent downward. The perianth part bends downward and the bees are escaped out. So, in this way, when these bees are carrying the pollens from the anther. When the bees are taking nectars from this anther and this region, the pollen grains are attached on the surface of the body. After withering this perianth region, tubular part of this perianth, it escapes. When it escapes, it carries the pollen grain. When it moves and visits to the next flower, the pollen grains are dusted on the stigmatic region of the next flower. Such a way, the effective pollination taking place in Aristolochia, the mechanism is known as trap mechanism. So, today you learned 3 different mechanisms. Number 1, lever mechanism. What is the example? Lever mechanism is observed in Salvia flower. This is the flower Salvia. And second one, translator mechanism, which is observed in Calotropis, very common flower, Calotropis. Then third mechanism, trap mechanism, which is observed in Aristolochia. Once again, let us recall what are the classification based on the biotic agents, or the topic is zoophily, pollination taking place by the agencies of animals are called as zoophily, and the flowers are said to be zoophilous. Based on zoophilous, that is different types of animals involved in pollination. Based on this, there are different classification, namely Ornithophilly, Chiropterophilly, Malacophilly, Entomophilly, Myrmecophilly. Myrmecophilly is the agencies of ants. Cantherophilly by beetle. Phalanophilly by moths. Melitophilly by bees. Psychophilly by butterflies. And 3 different mechanisms. liver mechanism, translator mechanism and trap mechanism. Learn all these questions before the next class. Thank you.